Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Changing Tracks, where we delve into the history of railways and how the layouts have changed. Today, we're going to be looking at the Trent Valley Line, which runs from Stafford in the north to Rugby in the south. Building of the Trent Valley Line commenced in 1845 and was completed 2 years later in 1847. The line runs for 51 miles from Rugby through to Stafford, avoiding the terminus at Birmingham Curzon Street. Originally built with just 2 tracks, the line was widened in stages between the 1870s and the 1910s. The last section of the line was widened in 2004 to 2008 between Tamworth and just north of Armitage. The only remaining 2-track section of the line is between Colwich and Stafford through the Shugborough Tunnel. Modernisation of the line occurred in the 1960s when the whole route was electrified. So, grab a helmet, hop on, and let's go explore. We start here at Stafford, which opened in 1837 and was built by the Grand Junction Railway. The Grand Junction Railway ran from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway through to Birmingham via Stafford and Wolverhampton. In 1847, the station became a junction when the Trent Valley Line was opened to Rugby. 2 years later, a new line was opened to Shrewsbury or whatever the hell you want to call it, by the Shropshire Union Railways and Canal Company. In 1867, a new line was opened from Stafford to Uttoxeter. In 1939, passenger services were withdrawn to Uttoxeter, with freight traffic following in 1951, leaving just a small stub to RAF Stafford. In the mid-1960s, the line to Shrewsbury was closed. In 1975, the short branch line to RAF Stafford was also closed. In 1962, during the electrification of the West Coast Main Line, the station went through a complete remodelling. Before remodelling, Stafford Station had only 3 through platforms and 5 bay platforms. Now it has 5 passenger through platforms, 1 post office platform and 1 bay platform. At the same time, they also built this beautiful, brutalist behemoth. Ugh. Stafford was the scene of 2 train crashes in the 1990s. The driver of an empty train ran into the back of an express train which was waiting in platform 4. The driver of the empty train, who was the only fatality, was found to have worked an excessive number of hours in the lead up to the crash and was also intoxicated. 36 other people were injured in the crash. In March 1996, a freight train derailed just south of Stafford Station on the line to Wolverhampton. The cause was a fractured axle, which caused the train to derail and was subsequently hit by a travelling post office train in the opposite direction. 1 person was killed and 20 more were injured. The next station along is Milford and Brockton, serving the villages of Milford and Brockton. The station opened in 1877, closed in 1950 and had just 2 platforms. The line through this section takes a rather curvy route in order to pass Shugborough Hall and Hayward Park. With the introduction of tilting trains, it can make for quite a queasy ride. Numerous alternative routes were considered to avoid as much as possible passing through some of the estates which littered the area. The chosen route was built on the southern edge of the Shugborough estate, with a 777-yard tunnel coming out on the other side through Lord Lichfield's compost heap. Now we come to Colwich. The station here opened in 1847 and 2 years later became a junction in 1849. Local passenger services to Stone were withdrawn in 1947 and the station was closed in 1958. The site of the station is still a major junction for the West Coast Main Line, with the main route through to Glasgow via Stafford and the diverging route to Manchester via Stoke-on-Trent. Colwich Junction was the scene of a terrible train crash back in 1986. A passenger train from Manchester had just run a red light and had stopped foul of the crossover just as a train from Liverpool was approaching. One person died and 75 people were injured in the accident. The driver of the Manchester train believed that the signal was about to clear to green as he was approaching it, and that his route was cleared right the way through to the other side of the junction. The driver of the train from Liverpool was travelling at 90 miles an hour under a green signal when he saw the train in front of him. He only had 5 seconds to react before the collision. Rugeley Trent Valley opened in 1847. The station became a junction in 1859 when the Cannock Mineral Railway opened their own railway line through Cannock Chase to Walsall. In 1965, passenger services on the Cannock Mineral Railway to Walsall were withdrawn, leaving just an infrequent service on the Trent Valley line to Rugby until 1987 when the services were diverted into Coventry. In 1998, services were extended from Walsall back to Rugeley Trent Valley on the Cannock Mineral Railway. Between 2004 and 2008, passenger services on the Trent Valley Line platforms were withdrawn whilst they worked to widen the Trent Valley Line between Armitage and Tamworth. On the 12th of October 2007, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland named Class 67 locomotive 67029 as Royal Diamond, marking her diamond wedding anniversary with His Royal Highness Prince Philip. The final change came in 2019 when the line to Walsall was electrified. Armitage Station also opened in 1847 with the rest of the line and remained open until 1960. The station was originally built with its 2 platforms staggered. This lasted until 1892 when the platforms were lengthened and realigned and raised to standard height. After the closure of the station, this section remained 2 tracks until the West Coast Main Line upgrades in the mid-2000s, when a new bridge was built over the canal and 2 new lines were built. Just to the south of here is where High Speed 2 is expected to connect up with the West Coast Main Line at Handsacre Junction. There were 2 options under consideration for joining High Speed 2 with the West Coast Main Line. The first option would have seen the High Speed 2 lines joining onto the slow lines, with trains then having to cross over onto the fast lines. However, this was deemed inefficient. The preferred option is for the 2 up lines to be diverted to the north, with the high-speed lines joining the fast lines in the middle. Here we are again at Lichfield Trent Valley. Originally there were 2 separate stations, as I previously mentioned in the Cross City Line video. We start here at Lichfield Trent Valley, which opened in 1871, replacing 2 previous separate stations. The original station had opened in 1847 and the 2 stations were amalgamated in 1871. There's also a double track connection, which is now just single track with sidings just to the north, which were for a brewery. Shut up! The original station was built just to the other side of Burton Road and was moved to its present location in 1871 to provide an interchange with the South Staffordshire line. Now, the line between Armitage and Tamworth was the last section to be quadrupled in 2008. In 2004, works began to widen the section between Tamworth and Armitage to 4 tracks. Along the whole Trent Valley line, there was 1 level crossing remaining. However, they didn't want the level crossing over 4 tracks. So they built this bridge. The 4-track railway north of Lichfield was brought into use in May 2008, with the Lichfield Trent Valley signal box being closed and demolished a month later. In September of the same year, the 4-track railway between Tamworth and Lichfield came into use, with the Tamworth signal box being closed. On New Year's Day 1946, Lichfield Trent Valley was the scene of a terrible train crash. An express fish train was due to pass through the station, overtaking a passenger train which was picking up passengers at Lichfield Trent Valley. However, due to frozen points, the fish train was diverted into the platform and into the back of the passenger train. Despite the frozen points, the signalman was able to return the lever to its proper position, but unknown to him, the rod had bent. With the points lever in its normal position, the signalman was able to throw the lever for the signal, allowing the train into this section. This is one of the rare occasions when signal interlocking was unable to prevent an accident on the British railways. 20 people died in the accident and a further 21 passengers were injured. The current service pattern for the station is for one train per hour running from Crewe right the way through to London Euston, with a few extra peak time trains for Avanti West Coast. That train back there is on its way to Crewe. There are plans, however, to extend that service all the way through to Manchester, meaning that places like Lichfield, Tamworth and Atherstone will finally have a direct train to Manchester. Yay! Just to the east of Lichfield is where a new bridge was installed to carry high-speed 2 trains underneath the West Coast Main Line. The works took just 9 days and coincided with the demolition of a section of platform for the high-level platform at Lichfield Trent Valley. Isn't it beautiful? Tamworth Station was opened in 1839 by the Birmingham and Derby Railway. In 1847, it became an interchange when the Trent Valley line was opened with 2 new platforms on a lower level. During electrification of the railway, they found the bridge carrying the Birmingham to Derby line was too low, so they raised the bridge by 2 feet and installed concrete supports for the bridge. In 1870, the station was the scene of a terrible train crash when a mail train was diverted by mistake into the platform loop and crashed through the end of the buffers into the River Anker. 3 people were killed in the accident and a further 13 more were injured. The station was an important interchange for the Royal Mail trains. By 1950, up to 2,000 mail bags were being transferred per night. The Trent Valley line used to be connected to the Birmingham and Derby Railway. A connection to the west was built in 1847 and closed in 1969. A connection to the east was built by the Midlands Railway in the mid-1860s, but was never connected to the Trent Valley line and was dismantled by 1877. The next station south of Tamworth is Polesworth. This station opened in 1847 and was quadrupled to 4 tracks between 1901 and 1903. A large gap was left in the middle for an island platform which was never built, instead being occupied by a signal box. In 2004, the station was closed whilst they demolished the footbridge, which was never replaced. As a result, the station now receives a paltry 1 train per day and not on Sundays. The station was the scene of a train crash in November 1951. A train was diverted from the fast line to the slow line, but the driver had somehow missed a caution signal and as a result took the points too fast. Fortunately, the side of the train hit the platform which kept the train upright, resulting in only minor injuries inside the train. There are plans for a replacement station just to the south of here called Polesworth Parkway. The station is expected to open in 2033 and will be in the area around the A5 and the B5000. Is that a dirt track? Nah. Atherstone Station was also opened in 1847 along with the rest of the railway. In 1901, works began to widen the railway to 4 tracks, which lasted until 1909. During the widening of the station, a new signal box was built with an unusual design. The signal box was built above the lines, with the support pillars being built between the 2 fast lines. The supporting cross members were built on one side of the box, with the walkway being built on the other side. And just like a lot of the stations along this line, this station was the scene of a terrible train crash in 1860. A cattle train was shunting into a siding just to the south of the station. A mail train which was passing through ran a red signal and crashed into the back of the cattle train, killing 10 people. This station is also where the A5 Watling Street crosses over the railway. Watling Street is an ancient Roman road that runs from Dover to Wroxeter in Shropshire via the affluent towns of Dartford, Dunstable and Milton Keynes. When the line was first built, the A5 Watling Street crossed over the railway line by a level crossing with an underpass with pedestrians right next to it. This proved to be an inconvenience, so a new bridge was built during quadrupling, measuring just 6'3" or 1 Hugh Jackman. A new flyover has since been built, allowing higher vehicles to avoid the low bridge just to the north of Atherstone Station. Nuneaton Station was opened on the 15th of September 1847, originally with just 2 platforms. The station became a junction when the branch line to Coventry was opened in 1850. In 1864, the Midland Railway opened their own line from Leicester to Birmingham with a bypass loop as well as a link to Nuneaton Station. In 1873, the Ashby and Nuneaton Joint Railway was opened to Coalville. At the same time, Nuneaton Station was rebuilt and enlarged to cope with the increase in traffic. In 1915, Nuneaton Station was rebuilt again with a new island platform, a new station building and a new clock tower. In 1968, the bypass loop for the Leicester and Birmingham Railway was closed, with all trains being diverted into Nuneaton Station. Having previously been closed to passengers in 1931, the final section of the line to Coalville was closed in 1971. Up until 2004, Nuneaton used to be a major bottleneck, with trains having to cross over each other on the level to get to other platforms to serve different destinations. The solution was simple. To the north of the station was the old flyover used for trains from Leicester to Birmingham using the old loop line. 2 new platforms were added to the east and the Birmingham and Leicester line rerouted over the flyover. This worked perfectly except for freight trains from Leicester towards Stafford, which were still getting in everyone's way. This irritability was finally rectified in 2012 when the North Chord was added so that freight trains could cross over without getting in anyone's way. In June 1975, the station was the scene of a train crash. A sleeper train from London Euston to Glasgow entered a temporary speed restriction at 4 times the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. 6 people were killed and 38 more were injured. There were numerous causes to the accident. The first one was that the warning board, which was set up the standard distance away, had run out of gas. Numerous drivers prior had noticed that the board was not illuminated, however failed to report the incident at the earliest opportunity. The driver of the doomed service claimed that he believed the speed restriction had been lifted when he did not see the warning board. The driver, John Mackay, was later charged with manslaughter but found not guilty after a trial the following year. The next station along is Bulkington, which opened in 1847. A third track was added in 1871, and then the whole station was closed 60 years later in 1931. The platforms have long been demolished, but there is still a gap where the island platform used to be between the up slow and the up fast line. The station building was built along with the line in 1847, and is one of the few station buildings that were designed by John William Livock which still exist to this day, the others being in Atherstone and Colwich. Shilton Station. I said Shilton, not... Forget it. Shilton Station was also opened with the rest of the line in 1847. The station was originally opened with just 2 platforms. An extra line on the upside was added in 1871, along with a siding on the downside. The siding on the downside was extended in 1898. The station closed to passengers in 1957 and to goods traffic in February 1965. And unlike a lot of the train stations on the Trent Valley line, Shilton has never had a train crash. Yay! And finally, we come to Rugby. Ow! Rugby Station opened as a temporary terminus of the line from Birmingham until later on in the year when the line was extended through to London. This station was moved to just west of the current station when the Midlands County Railway from Leicester was opened in 1840. 1847 saw the opening of the Trent Valley line through to Stafford. The next line along was the Rugby and Stamford line, which ran from Rugby right the way through to Peterborough via Market Harborough, which opened in 1850. A year later, a new railway line was opened to Royal Leamington Spa. 1881 saw the opening of the new line through to Northampton. 4 years later, the current station was opened just to the east of the previous station. In 1889, the Grand Central Railway opened their own railway line from Sheffield right the way through to London, passing over the West Coast Main Line just to the east of Rugby Station. 1961 saw the first of a series of closures in the 1960s by everyone's favourite railway enthusiast, Dr. Richard Beeching. All right. The first casualty was in 1961, with the former Midlands County Railway to Leicester being closed. 5 years later, the line through to Leamington Spa closed as a through route, leaving just freight traffic for cement works. At the same time, the line through to Peterborough via Market Harborough was closed. The Grand Central Railway south of Rugby was also closed at the same time, leaving just a section between Rugby and Nottingham until 1969. In 1991, the final section of the Leamington line was closed to all traffic. The station at Rugby has gone through numerous changes over the years. Here is a simplified diagram of what the railways around the station looked like back in 1948. As you can tell, the entire station area was a complete mess, needing 5 signal boxes just in the station area to control everything. The biggest change to Rugby Station occurred in 2006 during the West Coast Main Line upgrade. Back then, all the platforms were on one single island, with passing trains having to travel at a slow 75 miles an hour. Once the upgrade was completed, 3 new platforms were added and trains that were passing through were able to reach 125 miles an hour. Just to the west of Rugby is where the Trent Valley line splits from the line to Birmingham. Up until electrification in the 1960s, the up Birmingham line crossed over the down Trent Valley lines on the level, causing a lot of traffic. So during electrification in the 1960s, the up Birmingham line was built on a flyover, crossing over the majority of the Trent Valley lines.
And that's pretty much all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching. I think I'm going to kick that rugby ball. I mean, we're rugby, why not? Oh no. Oh. Until next time, I'm off.